Yes, you can pet the dog. They should have led with that. Hey everybody, welcome back, Johnny here, and today we're talking about Remnant 2, which is coming out on the 25th of July, 21st for those of you who chill out for the Ultimate Edition. I got hands-on and was able to play for a few hours with my buddy Carrick from ACG, thanks to him for the opportunity there, and I had a great time doing some co-op with him. And I want to talk to you about the two things that I think the game has improved compared to the first one that will make a huge difference and make a lot more people enjoy this game compared to the first one. I'm also going to cover the issues that I ran into, and I'm going to be as transparent as I can with my experience so far with the game. Just keep in mind I can only show you footage of the first area that I was in due to the NDA from the devs. Without further ado, let's jump into it. Remnant 2 builds on the foundation of the first game onto what I thought was an excellent start in terms of a framework for a game. You have a little bit of a Souls flavor to it, and you have some procedural generation trying to make levels as different as possible for different people, so your experience would be perhaps wildly different than mine going into it in terms of the layouts that you encounter, different NPCs that you may talk to, all this type of stuff. But there were two main complaints that I had from the first game that I was hoping the devs would address, and I'm happy to say they have, to a certain extent at least. Number one, the boss designs hinged heavily on ads, and we all complained about this, I think. The main difficulty in the boss designs were the ads, the extra mobs that were flowing in endlessly, right, in the battle. And really without them, the boss was trivial. It was all balanced around the ads. I'm happy to say they took a different tact in Remnant 2. The bosses that I have fought so far, they have ads, don't get me wrong, but the balance is way different. The difficulty is much more centered around the boss itself. And there are some ads that are coming in, but they actually serve the purpose of giving you ammo effectively. Like many other games, ads drop ammo for you. And this is kind of the way that the game gives you sustain in the battle. In addition, like many other games, you have kill skills. What does that mean? That means some of your passives or traits or whatever are enabled by killing. And the only way to kill stuff during a boss battle is by having ads. And so that works well, I think. It's a way lower number of ads, and the frequency of them coming out and all that, just it seems way better in terms of a balance there. I've been pretty happy with it so far. I don't remember any boss battles where I was just completely and utterly overwhelmed by the ads and just having to devote most of my bandwidth towards them. There was one time I was playing with Carrick against I think it was like a tree boss, and it was a static boss. The boss himself didn't do anything, but ads were spawning around it, including big dudes, right? Big chunky dudes, and they had a ton of CC. So the problem was that you could actually get chain stunned. So, maybe a small ad would come and grab you, another one would throw a stun, and you were effectively stun locked. Now, the counterplay to this, of course, is to take out the ads quickly and promptly. But that was one time that I was annoyed by ads that I do remember. So just something to keep in mind. Some bosses, especially in the starting, were a bit more kind of passive or stationary, and the difficulty did revolve around ads. So that's one caveat and one counterexample to what I was explaining. Whereas most other bosses that I found later on were balanced around their own difficulty as a boss rather than the ads themselves. Concern number two that I had from the first game was variety. And variety of several things. We could talk about locations. They looked a bit samey in the first game. I didn't get a lot of stimulation from different environments and things like that. That's been addressed. In this game, we have different kind of biomes or places you go to that are wildly different in theme, setting, and also music. So the music also fits those settings. I don't want to spoil and break down what the different settings are because trust me, they're quite enjoyable to dive into and be surprised by them. But let's just say you can expect a wild range of things between medieval and futuristic, and I think there's gonna be something there for everybody. Secondarily, I wanted more variety of enemies from the first game. And here again, they've done some work in that regard too. Just like there's a different setting depending on the world you go to, the mobs fit that setting, and the enemies are different in each of those worlds to a great degree, actually. Not to say that they have advanced or incredible attack patterns or AI or anything like that, but they look way different. Their attacks are different. Some of them are more projectile based or gun based. Others are more melee based, and they do fit the setting very well. I did find that going to these different worlds shake things up a lot more, and you get a lot more interesting settings and things to explore. Now, it's not all guns and roses in this thing, and there were some issues. Mostly, we didn't have any connection problems playing together, even though Carrick lives in the US, all the way in the Pacific, right? And I'm over here. We had great connection, actually, throughout the whole thing. I had one crash playing with him, but outside of that, it's been very stable. On the technical side, though, the game has some FPS problems and some optimization issues that I hope the devs are working on, because I played on the review patch, which may be improved on release. So that's always a disclaimer we have to say, that may be improved on the release day patch. But I did have issues maintaining a 60 FPS in 4K with a 3090 RTX. In some areas, it did drop down to 55 or 50, and that was using DLSS in performance mode. If I turn it to quality mode or even turn off DLSS, it would drop quite a bit to 45 FPS or something like that. So just be aware that there were some optimization issues there, because I would definitely expect to run a game that looks like that in 4K at stable 60 without having to resort to DLSS in performance mode. Now, that's not to say the game looks bad. I think it looks great, actually. I've been very pleased with some of the locations. There's some really good lighting in here. Nothing crazy like Final Fantasy XVI, but definitely a looker compared to the first game. The other issue that we ran into was the procedural generation resulted in some areas that didn't make any sense at all. And what I mean by this is there's a feeling that nobody would ever craft that area, if you know what I mean. Corridors that don't lead anywhere or that lead back uselessly into the same area, that type of thing is a byproduct of procedural generation. And another thing that stems from that is the quest design doesn't always work seamlessly, because what may work well for you because you ran into the right NPC at the right time did not work for me, for example, right? Maybe I didn't find that NPC until way later, and then I had to kind of backtrack and go back and forth until I found stuff. So we had some confusing situations with quests where like stuff didn't make sense. We had to backtrack a ton to find out what was going on. There were some confusing things as well when something pops up saying objective success, but really you didn't actually finish the main quest, and it isn't clear where you should proceed at that point from there. In fact, you just did a secondary optional thing that doesn't translate into completing your main quest in the area. In terms of gear and weapons, you can upgrade your weapons, you can also buy new ones in town, and you can buy mods to equip on the weapons. The mods are simply some type of maybe a bonus to your damage. That could be fire damage or acid damage, something like that you can turn on, or it could be active spells. Maybe you freeze time with one. There will be different things like that. Some are more utility based, some are more DPS based. And there's a specific trait or thing you can level in your character to boost the damage or effectiveness of these mods. So it's definitely something you can lean into. If you want to be kind of mod-centric in your build, you can go down that path. You can also upgrade the raw damage of your weapons, be it your melee weapons or your guns. And your melee weapon has its own moveset. Every weapon has a different moveset. Some of them have really powerful charged attacks that are special, and you can get different relics and things to boost those specifically. Other weapons are more about the doing quick attacks and getting a lot of DPS that way. But you can definitely choose to go down a more melee-centric route if you want. Just keep in mind, you're going to trade a lot of hits with enemies because you don't have a way to stop enemies from attacking you. Even if you land a melee attack on them, they will still hit you. So it's not a very productive playstyle in my experience, but it can come in handy in bosses. Some bosses have big openings where you can go in and do a lot of melee hits. That can be a lot of DPS, even compared to your main weapons. So keep that in mind. One thing that I was a bit disappointed with is that you can't actually upgrade your gear. So anything you're wearing, that will have its static attributes and you can't really boost that up. You can buy new gear in town and they will have different resistances to different statuses. So it will be more of a situational thing of what you equip depending on where you're headed. Different areas will have more prominent status effects and you will start to learn what effects are associated with different worlds that you're going into. That's part of the gameplay, that's part of the learning curve. But keep in mind, the main way you're going to get stronger is by dropping better gear from your missions, rather than going to town and upgrading specific gear that you have. That really isn't in place there. It's not really something that you can do in the game. Really, the playstyle is you go out there, you get great loot, and then you get stronger. That is the way you progress. So that wraps up my early impressions of Remnant 2. Let me know what you thought down below. I think this is something to be excited for, especially if you have some people to play with in co-op or a good friend you want to jump in, shoot the shit together. It's great fun. It works well in solo too, but highly recommend the co-op experience in this. I'm going to be playing this on release as well over on my stream in Twitch, Johnny Plays Live. If you want to check that out, love to see you over there. And with that, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.